share your thoughts anonymously because I'm really interested in everybody's candid responses, but we can't do that on Zoom. So just unmute yourself and tell me any thoughts that you have about this video. Don't be
hurry to get through the line.
Sorry, Carol?
He was in a hurry to finish what he was doing.
Okay.
I wasn't able to see it. I've had some problems this afternoon and this morning with Zoom from my house, so I'm sorry I wasn't able to see it.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay. All right. So it just shows President Trump going down the line and shaking hands with some of the people in the group. And Jean, maybe you could characterize what else we see in the video.
Honestly, I was not paying that close attention, but I saw him kind of going through the motions without any feeling.
Carol, something to add?
Is that Pence following him?
Yeah.
Yep. And could you hear anything in particular?
Only at the end when he said goodbye or something.
All right, let's see if we can just watch it one more time.
Oh, there's a wheelchair. Oh, yeah.
I don't see a wheelchair.
Yeah, it's definitely there.
Hi,
Hi, Linda.
how are you?
Do you have a thought?
Well, it looked to me like he was ignoring the children,
Okay.
probably because they can't vote.
Okay. Anything, just anything. We're just sharing openly, no worries, right? This is just a little experiment. So don't censor yourself.
Well, I don't think he has any empathy, so I think he would totally ignore the child in the wheelchair.
Okay. So just for Elaine's benefit, so when we see the video, we hear the child in the wheelchair calling out, "Mama, Mama," and reaching out his arm. And we don't see Trump responding in any way to the child. Everybody agree with what
Yes.
we're seeing?
Yes.
Yeah. And so is there anyone who wants to share anything else in terms of reaction, or has Linda in some ways represented a little bit of what you're seeing and thinking? You can see why it's much more useful to do this with anonymous responses, because people feel more free to react. So here's some of the responses that my students offered. This is an anonymous platform, and you can see they go right in there, right? Barack Obama wouldn't have done that. Rude, do kids not matter, right? Which Linda had a politer version of this reaction, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what happened next? This video circulated on Twitter and caught the attention of J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series, and she sent out a bunch of tweets. This monster of narcissism values only himself. How stunning and horrible that Trump cannot bring himself to shake the hand of a small boy who only wanted to touch the president. She also contextualized her reaction with, remember that event where Trump had imitated the disabled reporter?
Yeah.
Right. So she transmitted her slew of tweets to her many, many followers. Many, many people retweeted her, including Chelsea Clinton. So I showed my students the reaction by J.K. Rowling, and you see that just makes them double down in their reaction in saying, you know, yeah, Trump doesn't acknowledge people who are not like him. He doesn't value the youth. One person said, I don't think she was harsh, just like the president tweets, she can too. So again, this just reinforces their initial reaction. So let's see a little bit more of this video.
Well, thank you, Dr. To act. So, with gratitude for his leadership and his persistence and determination to make American healthcare great again, it is my high honor and distinct privilege to introduce to these families and to all of you the 45th President of the United States of America, President Donald Trump.
Oh, okay.
So Linda, Elaine is having a little bit of trouble viewing. So can you explain what we just saw?
Sure. When President Trump walked in, the first thing he did is he saw the child in the wheelchair, and then he bent down to talk to him.
Right. Yeah. Everybody got it? So what just happened?
So the clip that we saw first, if that was the only clip that you saw, you would have said, well, Trump is being Trump. In this clip, he is being a human, which he doesn't do much. Doesn't do much, doesn't do often.
Right.
I'm not sure that I would conclude that. Knowing Trump, I would say he was using these people as props for something that he wanted to say.
Excellent, excellent response, Jean. So you can see that my students, when they saw that second clip, they were closer to Jean than they were to Linda. They were still doubling down on the fact that this didn't change anything, right? So, right, still does not change the fact that he ignored a 3-year-old, and this does not change anything. I still feel the same way about him. Yeah. So what we call this is confirmation bias. So the idea that even when we see something that counters our existing beliefs, like the fact that Trump is showing humanity towards that little boy, our pre-existing ideas color how we see that situation. So we see the no, even though there may be a million yeses. And we look at the information and we seek to find what confirms our beliefs, even when we are confronted with something that is a counter to our initial beliefs. So it's easy for us when we see the misleading video, it's easy for us to believe that it's true, especially if we don't support Trump. And even when we see a video that contradicts that misleading video, for many of us, we still don't believe anything good about Trump because, right, we are going to see everything that he does through the lens of our existing beliefs about him.
But that pre-existing belief doesn't come out of thin air. It comes out of a whole lot of experience with this guy.
Absolutely, absolutely. But notice the way that Linda responded, the way that you compared with how you responded, where you said, I still think there's something kind of creepy going on here, whereas Linda said, oh, we were by that initial video, right? So it's that still when we see the video that contradicts our beliefs, we still want to find something about our beliefs in that video, right? So that's the idea of confirmation bias. So what I want to ask you to think about, so you could see in that first video that that's an example of fake news, right? You can recognize that somebody doctored that video in the sense that they clipped the end of it and they posted it just the end in order to dupe people like J.K. Rowling and make Trump look bad. And when we see the entire video, right, it's very different. So whoever did that, whoever cut the video and circulated that misleading clip, their goal was to get people to say bad things about Trump, right? And so that's a classic example of fake news. Are you guys all with me?
Yeah.
Okay. So
When does bias become objective fact?
yes. So we're gonna let's just, I have another poll for you. Hold on. So are media bias and fake news the same? Good, excellent. So everybody said no. So for a lot of people, and the way that Trump actually speaks about it, these are the same things, right? But when we think about it, it's not the media who posted that video of Trump, that misleading video, right? It wasn't CNN or Fox News. It was Joe Creepy Schmo, who posted it in order to ensnare vulnerable people, right? So when we think about bias versus fake news, those are very different things. They're interrelated, there's an overlap, but we can't conflate those two concepts. So for example, if we looked at the mainstream media coverage of the Trump Rowling episode, and we looked at different news sources, so the Washington Post, which is a progressive publication, Fox, which is conservative, the Daily Telegraph, which is a conservative British publication, you talk about the range of responses that they have, and you could then see bias, but they all cover the facts in exactly the same way. So nobody is saying, like the Washington Post isn't saying, oh, Trump ignored the little boy in the wheelchair. Everybody agrees on exactly what happened in this incident. So one of the things that we tend to think about is the idea that research can help us, that researching something can help us be less vulnerable to fake news. So here's a little comic that illustrates some of the issues about research, and I've actually done some fun experiments with my students about this. The problem is that when we do this kind of research, we tend to find things that agree with what we're looking for. So we think we're being sort of open-minded when we use research, but in fact, we aren't necessarily. So there is a researcher at Princeton who talks about what's called motivated reasoning. And what she discusses is the fact that people are literally not at liberty to believe anything they like. They are constrained by their prior beliefs. So she talks about all of these fun social psychology experiments. So here's just one example. They give an article to people to read, and the article is about the correlation between heavy drinking and cancer in women. They give the article to men, they give the article to women who are not heavy drinkers, and they give the article to women who are heavy drinkers. So as you might expect, now that I've set you up with this, the women who are heavy drinkers, when they read the article about the dangers of heavy drinking, they are extremely skeptical and doubtful about the article, and they say, oh, this article doesn't seem credible to me. This article's research methodology seems problematic. But men and women who are not heavy drinkers, they have no problem with the article, right? So when we are faced with something that threatens us in some way, or that threatens our core beliefs, it's easy for us to dismiss it, to discount it. And that's the idea of motivated reasoning. So that's why the idea of the open mind and open-minded research is so difficult for us, because if we encounter something in our research that threatens our core beliefs or our pre-existing knowledge, we are likely to discount it, right? When we engage in research, it's easy for us to be constrained by our prior beliefs. So there's another concept that's really interesting in relation to this, and that is the concept of intellectual humility. Now, intellectual humility is the idea that our beliefs may be fallible, and I think of Fauci as a classic example of somebody who embodies that intellectual humility. You will often hear him saying, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what the virus is going to do. And what's striking about that is you recognize how infrequently people in leadership do that, right? We value and see as a leadership quality the idea of actually having strong beliefs. And we tend to think that intellectual humility is somehow a representation of vulnerability, of weakness, of limitations. And there's been some research, in fact, that as we become more educated, we become less intellectually humble, which is really interesting. And so you'd think that the more educated people are, the less vulnerable they would think to thinking that they know everything. But in fact, the more educated we are, it seems to be the more that we think being smart means taking a stand and having a clear opinion, and not admitting when we don't know, or now not focusing on the fact that we can never know all of the answers. So these concepts, I think, are really critical in terms of thinking about how fake news works. So fake news works in part because we all are subject to confirmation bias, because of motivated reasoning, because there are bad actors out there who are giving us this stuff for all of their different purposes, and because in general, many of us lack intellectual humility. So what we're going to talk about at this point is how you can try to have skepticism and inhibit your own lack of intellectual humility, how you shouldn't trust your gut and let that confirmation bias influence how you think about things, and using tools as opposed to what you think or how you feel or your gut to verify. Everybody good so far? Okay, so let me ask you another question. So how confident are you that you can discern what is credible and reliable information on the web?
I think I'm confident. What about you?
I probably would say a little. We'll go with yours.
It's a bit of ego.
Yeah. A bit.
Okay. All right. So we're going to see. So we've got 1 very confident, 2 a little confident, and 2 not very confident.
I would have been a little confident.
Okay. Okay.
My
So
ego
we're,
gets in the way.
sorry?
My ego gets in the way.
It gets in everyone's way. So we're going to look at 2 websites and evaluate them. So the first one is aap.org. So what I want you to do is open up a new browser or look on your phone, and you have 3 minutes to decide whether or not it's a good site.
AAP?
aap.org.
American Academy of what?
Where is it?
Pediatrics.
aap.org.
Oh, what did I do here? Oh, shoot.
But some places say membership not required.
No, that's why I'm suspicious. No, it's not anti-tax.
It's what?
30 seconds. Okay, make your vote, please.
I'm gonna go with. Did you want to go with?
Okay. So we have, let me end the polling. So we have 3 people who are not sure, 2 who said no, and 1 who said yes. Okay, we're going to come back to this. But let's go to the next site. The next site is acpeds, acpeds.org.
PEP.
ACPEDS.org.
Right. What was it?
acpeds.org.
Oh, AC.
PEDS. Donate and become a member. Go back to that front page.
This one doesn't tell you what their policy is. It's all about guidance.
Okay, 30 seconds to make your final decision.
I'm not sure about this.
Become a member and donate.
Okay, make your vote, please.
Not many black faces. No black faces.
Time's up, time's up.
I don't. I'm not sure. But I would say no.
Okay,
It had kind
so I heard a little bit. I have 4 no's and 2 not sures. So let's just talk about this. So did you think 3 minutes was a short or a long time to do this kind of evaluation? Anybody, you can unmute yourself.
I thought it was very short.
Okay, so how did you go about evaluating? Anybody? Gail?
I went to the About Us sections, and well, I got a little bit lucky. I would say lucky because again, there is bias built in. But when I Googled American College of Pediatricians, the first thing that popped up was the Southern, I never get the name right, Southern Poverty Law Center, which labeled them a fringe anti-LGBTQ hate group. And so if I trust the Southern Poverty Law Center's evaluation, that certainly informs my decision. But going to the website, if you go into About Us, their first precept is that their belief in supporting children, yada, 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 begins with conception. So to me, that says that they are coming from that particular political point of view, which is not my point of view. Same thing where I found unsure on the previous one. All of their links led to other professional organizations, American College of Surgeons and blah, blah, blah. And the only thing that would inform my evaluation of what was on there is that they're heavily supported by pharmaceutical companies.
Right.
Which means that their recommendations are coming also from a particular bias, but perhaps one I'm more comfortable subscribing to, although one that I would perhaps read their recommendations and then look to another source for confirmation.
Mm-hmm. But so when we think about the issue of bias here, a hate group and a group that's that gets money from pharmaceutical companies, that's a pretty different scale.
Absolutely.
So when we look at just looking at Wikipedia and we look at the American Academy of Pediatrics, it has 64,000 members. It's a professional association that's been around since 1930. Whereas when we look at Wikipedia for the American College of Pediatricians, it was founded in 2002. It has 1 employee. It's a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center, and its primary focus is advocating against the rights of gay and lesbian people to adopt children. So it's night and day, right? So, and do you see how easy it is if we go outside using either Wikipedia or Google to find this kind of information? So that's the trick here, is not to read the website actually, not to actually look at the about page at all, because if I'm a hate group, am I going to say on my about page, I'm a hate group, right? I'm going to try to make myself look good. Once upon a time, especially for people my age and older, we were taught to look, is it a professional looking site, right? But nowadays, everybody can make a professional looking site. So the kids today, they don't get fooled by that at all. But for us, we think, oh, are there typos? Does it look good? And both of these sites look perfectly professional. And if we spend our time looking at the site, first of all, it can be very time consuming and it's hard to figure out, right? So what we want to do is go outside of the site and use either Wikipedia or Google to see what other people have discovered, right? And then it becomes very, very clear cut and simple and easy. And 3 minutes is more than enough time to figure out whether it's a trustworthy site or not. Everybody with me?
Yeah.
So the experiment that I just had us do is a famous experiment that was conducted at Stanford. And they did this experiment with historians, with fact checkers, and with Stanford undergraduates. And most people do exactly what many of us just did, which is they look at the features of the website, they look at the about page, and they try to evaluate its reliability on their own. The fact checkers did exactly what Gail did, which is they went outside of the site. We call that reading laterally. And they opened up a new browser to check the credibility. And they did it in a fraction of a time and got much more accurate responses. So it's actually interesting. The historians did the worst, the students were in the middle, and the fact checkers did the best. And I think probably that's a factor of age more than anything, that we know that older people are more vulnerable to this, and we just don't necessarily have the same kinds of skills that younger people do. But also we might think about that intellectual humility, right? That historians thought that they could determine through their own egos, they could evaluate the information on the sites. So they were reading carefully within the sites. Whereas fact checkers said, I don't know, let me see what other people had to say, right? And that's the simple and quick way to go about this. So one of the things that I want you to think about is this idea of using tools to determine these things as opposed to relying on your instincts, your gut. And so the idea of reading laterally and using the credibility of other researchers that are out there, and just the easy tools of the web, just using Google and Wikipedia. Now, Google and Wikipedia aren't perfect, but they're much quicker and better than we are. And the idea is that if you can't find a quick answer through Wikipedia and Google, then just don't trust it, because there are plenty of things that are trustworthy out there. And if you're not sure, move on. And that's part of what we want to do is, if we're not sure, we don't want to spread misinformation, right? And it should be very quick and easy for us to tell whether something is reliable or not. So this is a researcher that's done a lot of work on this. If you're interested to check out more of his work, it's very fun and interesting. So let's take another look at a quick example. So I don't actually have the video for you on this. This is a screenshot from Twitter, somebody who tweeted a video, and it says the Palestinian representative played a song on his mobile phone and danced at the UN as a response to Nikki Haley announcing that the US will be cutting aid to Palestinians unless they recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. So I'm going to give you just a quick amount of time. Is this a real story or not? Sorry.
Wait, what was that? It's false. Because I never said that.
Five seconds. Cast your vote, please. Vote, vote, vote. One more time. Time's up. Make your decision. Take your best guess. Okay, all of you who don't want to commit. Okay. Okay, so we had 4 people who said it was fake and 1 person who said they were not sure. Anybody want to share how you went about this?
No.
No?
I Googled it.
Googled it. Fantastic. And?
I ended up in a site that I'm not sure is valuable or not, but it's called Snopes.com.
Fantastic.
That it was false. So if somebody's saying it's false, I would have probably looked at some other websites, but didn't have time.
Good. So Snopes is actually a fact-checking site. It is extremely reliable, and all they do is look for fake news and try to expose. So that's a great way to go about it. like Trump video that we started with. This is an example of a clip that has been miscaptured. So it's not from 2013. Here's what the real clip is.
فيها غني عتابة وميجانة وسامر في.
So you can see it was just a singer who was invited to sing at the UN, and people were dancing at the UN. Nothing to do with Nikki Haley, nothing to do with protesting. Miscaptioning clips is a very easy way to manipulate public opinion, right? It's a really easy way to make fake news. And there are lots of ways that we could go about checking this one. We could, for example, look who this Sasha Sayan is. We could look at Real Progressive Front. Those are good options as well, but an easy way is just to put in some of the critical details of the event into Google and see what turns up. And yes, Snopes is a very reliable, very effective fact-checking site. And there are lots of fact-checking sites out there. And a lot of the mainstream media have fact checkers. All right, last one.
Wow. Yeah. Inside ATM, it's true.
Last 5 seconds. Cast your vote.
Was that the date of your birthday? Oh, it said 2018.
Oh.
But that doesn't mean that's when it was. Somebody liked it.
Okay, so we have 2 people who think it's real and 2 people who think it's fake. So this certainly sounds like it's fake, doesn't it?
No.
What does your gut say when you look at this story?
Sounds like it sounds too fake. It must be real.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Have you heard of mandatory.com? Does that sound like a authoritative, credible organization? No, right? Okay, so if we go to Google News, that's what I did here. Go to Google News, I put in rats, India, eat money, ATM. It will show a range of different stories. And, you know, maybe I don't trust the New York Daily News, but I see the BBC, I see ABC News, and this is just the first page, right? So, very quick and easy to see that, yes, this is a real story. This is a true, it sounds fake, but this one seems real, right?
I put those words in Snoop and got nothing back.
Okay, yep. So sometimes you're not going to get it, right?
So I assumed it was fake.
Cash.
But if we look at Snopes, they aren't gonna verify every true story. What they're more likely to do is to rate something as fake when it is fake. So just because it's not there doesn't necessarily mean that it's fake, right? If it doesn't show up on a fact-checking site. So one way is to use Google News and to see whether there is a lot of coverage of something that seems fake. And if there is, and if you can recognize some credible coverage among the different sources, that's another way very quickly and easily to say, yeah, actually, even though this doesn't sound real, this actually could be real. And in this case, it was real. So what I want to close with is this example that you might remember. There are so many of these, but do you remember when there was this incident where Giuliani posted the distorted video of Nancy Pelosi, and he said he didn't know that it had been altered? He said, I had no, and it made her look drunk, right? And he said, I had no reason to believe it at the time. It looked like enough of an extension of the way she communicates anyway. So here we can chalk this up to his confirmation bias, right? It looked like enough of an extension of the way she communicates anyway. He doesn't think much of her, so it just seemed to confirm what he already thought. He said, he had not seen the original footage. Where do you go to check that it's inaccurate? How could I have figured out that it was inaccurate? Now, when he was saying that, he was saying it as a rhetorical question. He wasn't actually taking responsibility and saying, oh, I should have known. But for the rest of us, we should know, right? We shouldn't be spreading videos and images and stories that we don't know are true. And he could have figured this out if he didn't just trust his gut and if he'd done just a little bit of research, right? And it's really important that we do that. So part of why I've given you such a short amount of time to respond when I've asked you to verify your sources, the sources that we were looking at here, is because none of us is going to spend a half an hour researching something before we retweet it or share something on Facebook, right? Like that's not the fun of social media. But even if you take 1 minute, 60 seconds of research to check on something, just by using Wikipedia or Google News before you pass it along, the chances that you are duped are significantly reduced. And again, it can't be that you rely on your intelligence, your education, your gut to determine whether something is or is not true, because we can't trust those things. The bad actors that are out there are relying on our intelligence and our gut in order to play on our credibility. So we need to use these tools so that we don't create a broader climate of distrust and cynicism in the world of social media. Okay, so last poll here. Okay, so while I'm happy that you feel more confident and informed, I really want you to feel less confident. I really want you to recognize how there are bad actors out there and how easy it is to be fooled. I don't want you to be intellectually arrogant based on an hour of going through this. I want you to retain your intellectual humility, because only our intellectual humility is going to make us rely on doing that research and be always skeptical. But it is good that you now know, okay, if I am skeptical, how do I check something out? Good?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So any questions? Any thoughts? Did you have a little fun? So I wrote an article about this. If anybody wants to check it out, you can just
great.
Google it. Thank you, Elaine. All right, that's it. Unless anybody has any questions, thank you. Have a good day. I hope you
Thank you.
enjoy
Bye.
the sunshine.
you.
Bye.
Thank you, Audrey.
Thank you.
Take care.